Today we're going to review fractions, decimals, and percentages. We're going to talk about what fractions mean, and then we're also going to talk about how to go from fractions to decimals, decimals to percentages, and any sort of combination that you can think of. Go ahead and title your notes fractions, decimals, and percentages. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is what a fraction means. So, understanding fractions. So basically, a fraction is a numerical way to compare a part of something to a whole. And the way we write them is like this. We usually write the part on top as the numerator, and then the whole as the denominator, or it's on the bottom. And you see fractions in a couple of common situations. For example, one of the most basic examples of fractions is pizza. You know, you ordered a piece of pizza with, or you ordered a pizza with a friend, and you guys all eat a certain number of slices, and you want to figure out numerically how many slices you ate, or how much of the pizza you ate. So, for example, if you have a pizza and it's split up into 4 parts, and you eat a fourth, or that part, that section of the pizza, the amount that you ate was one section of the pizza out of 1, 2, 3, 4 sections. So I listed the part on top and the whole down on the bottom. Another example. Money. So, for example, if I wanted to buy an Xbox, that cost me $100, and I only have $20 saved up so far. The way I'd represent this is putting the part that I saved up, so the part over the whole amount of price, which was $100, and that would be my fraction. And I can actually reduce this, and first, since I notice there's a 0 on top and a 0 on bottom, I'm going to go ahead and cross them off. That gives me the fraction of 2 over 10, and I can reduce this even further because 2 can be divided by 2, and 10 can also be divided by 2. And that gives me 1 over 5. And so the amount of money that I have saved up so far for my Xbox is 1/5 of the amount of money that I need. One more example. And I don't know, for lack of a better name, I'm going to call this the box example. And oftentimes you've probably seen this in, your schooling and your education, but the way that fractions sometimes are represented are with these fraction bars or boxes, whatever you want to call them, and they're usually divided up into different sections. And I apologize for my lines not being straight. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sections of that box. And if 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections are filled up, 6 sections are filled up, my fraction for the shaded amount of boxes is 6 sections, or 6 parts, out of 7, which is the whole amount, or the total amount of boxes, and so my fraction is 6 over 7. Alright, so what I'd like you to do right now is go to page 14 and 15 in your packet and do those problems. And they look like this. There's just these different problems that help you practice right. Now that you understand that fractions are part of a whole, we're now going to talk about other ways to express that same type of information. So we're going to talk about right now how to convert fractions to decimals. And decimals are also a representation of a part over a whole. It's really simple to convert fractions to decimals. You simply do this. You divide the numerator, or the top number, by the denominator, the bottom number. I'll do an example. So why don't you go to page 17 with me, and the problems that I'm going to be looking at are number 27 through 34. So let's look at number 27. We have the fraction 1/2, and we want to write this as a decimal. I know it says in the instructions to write each at a percentage, but before we get to a percentage, I'm going to show you how to do this as decimals. So you have 1/2. And so what is this equal to as a decimal? Well, you can either do this the long way, or you can use your calculator. You can enter in the top number. You press the divide button. You enter in the second number, or the denominator, which is 2. And I get a decimal, 0.5, and that's my answer. Okay. Let's do one more example. We have 1 over 8. So we're going to enter in 1 divided by 8, and we get 0.125. So my answer is 0.125. Go ahead and pause the video and finish the rest of these problems. Alright, now we're going to go from decimals to percents. And to do this, you simply move the decimal over to the right by 2 places. Or, if you want to think about it in this way, you can multiply the decimal by 100. So go back to page 17, problems number 27 through 34, and I will show you some examples. So here I have a decimal, and in the instructions it says actually to write each as a percent. So now that we've gone from a fraction to decimal, you can go from a decimal to a percent. So 0.5 is the same thing as 0.50. And to change this to percent, you're basically saying how much of 100 do we have. You can just move the decimal over 2 places, and this becomes 50%. Another way I could do this, which does the same thing, is I can take 0.50 or 0.5, multiply it by 100, and that gives me 50% as well. Okay, we'll do one more example. I have 0.125, and I can either multiply this by 100, so 0.125 times 100, and I would get 12.5%. The shortcut way to do this is simply move the decimal over by 2 places. So moving it from in front of the 125, I get 12.5% as well. So go ahead, you should have decimals written for all these fractions. Go ahead and now change your decimals to percents. So pause the video, finish these problems, and when you're done, you can restart the video again. Now that you're done with problems 27 through 34, go ahead and go to page 16 and do some more problems, and try problems 9 through 16. Pause the video again. When you're done with those problems, go ahead and come back to the video. So you just converted fractions to decimals and decimals to percents. So now we're going to go backwards a little bit. You're going to go from percents to decimals now. So to do this, it's really simple. It's basically the opposite of how you go from decimals to percents. So instead of moving the decimal over to the right this time, you're going to move the decimal over to the left 2 places. And this is essentially taking the percent, dividing it by 100, and then figuring out what the decimal is. So another way you could do this is divide by 100. So go ahead and turn to page 16 in your packet. We're going to look at problems 1 through 8. So number 1 says 90%, and 90% as a fraction is simply 90 out of 100. And when you go from fractions to decimals, all you have to do is divide 90 by 100. When you plug this into your calculator, you should get 0.9. Another way to do this, and this is really the shortcut way, is you take the decimal, which is really back here, because it's 90, and you move it over 2 places, and so this is also 0.90 or 0.9. Let's do one more example, okay? 30% is the same thing as saying 30 over 100. When you plug that into your calculator, you get 0.3. Or you can take 30%, and knowing that the decimal's behind here, you can move it over 2 places, and you get 0.30, which is the same thing as saying 0.3. Now that you know how to do this, go ahead and do the rest of the problems, 3 through 8. Pause the video. When you're done with these problems, you can restart the video again. The last conversion we're going to talk about is percents to fractions, and we've kind of already covered this in the previous conversions, but I'm just going to go ahead and talk about it just to make sure you understand how to do it. So when you're going from percents to fractions, you're simply changing the percentage sign to a fraction with 100 as the denominator. And then just a little note, make sure you simplify as needed. So turn to page 16, problem 17 through 26. I'll do some examples with you, and then you're going to do the rest on your own. So let's see here. We have 25%, and we have to write this percentage as a fraction. So 25% is the same thing as saying you have 25 pieces or parts out of 100. And now that it's a fraction, we can go ahead and simplify it if we need to. And since 25 and 100 can be reduced to a smaller fraction, let's go ahead and do that. So 25 can be divided by 5, and 100 can also be divided by 5. And we have to divide the top by the same thing as the bottom. So we end up getting 25 divided by 5 is 5, 100 divided by 5 is 20, and we can still reduce this even further, and 5 and 20 can both be divided by 5 as well. So I'm going to divide this top number and this bottom number both by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1, 20 divided by 5 is 4, and that's as simple as I can get it. Let's do one more example. 70% is the same thing as saying 70 out of 100. Since 70 and 100 both have a 0, I can go ahead and cancel these out, and I'm left with 7 over 10. And 7 and 10 can't both be divided by the same thing, so this is the most simple fraction that it can be. Now go ahead and finish the rest of the problems, and you're done with the lecture for today.